Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Big Blend Radio's new Tales of Ted DeGrazia show, where every fourth Sunday we get to chat with our friend Lance Laber. We call him the Tucson Dude. He is the executive director of DeGrazia Gallery in the Sun in Tucson, Arizona. And he joins us. You know, he's been on our show for years, but we know there's so many new people traveling around, new listeners. And, Tucson is an amazing city, and there's so much to experience, like Saguaro National Park. All the museums, there's the downtown district, but art is really at the top of the list when it comes to Tucson, art and food and nature, right? But the DeGrazia Gallery in the Sun is one of those destinations that will blow your mind if you haven't been. It is a hub of creativity. It is in a beautiful setting at the base of the Catalina Mountains. Mm-hmm. And so Lance joins us all the time on shows, but we thought we need to make this a little bit more official, because there's always something new to learn about the infamous artist Ted DeGrazia, who's known for portraying Southwest culture, Southwest life, of desert life. And I encourage you to go to the website DeGrazia.org. So welcome back, Tucson Dude. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Hey, this is cool. We're excited about doing this new series because I know so many people are interested in art, and I think everyone has to go to the gallery and learn more about Ted DeGrazia, because I think he was the epitome of an artist doing exactly what he wanted to do, no matter what anyone said. He even opened his own gallery when, people said, no, you can't take your art and put it in here. He's like, oh yeah, watch this. I'll create my own. But he also built his own gallery. He traveled. He's also known as one of the most reproduced artists in the world for many reasons. So we can talk about that. But I think the gallery should be really, when you think of a top 10 thing to do in Tucson, I think the gallery should really be on there, because Nancy and I travel full time, as you know. We've been all over. You have too, and travels. But I don't think there's a gallery anywhere on the planet like DeGrazia Gallery in the Sun. Do you see a lot of people come in and kind of just their eyes light up and go, wow, this is completely different?
Everybody does that. I think people come to the gallery and they don't know what to expect. They've heard word of mouth or they've read something, and then they show up, and it's jaw-dropping what DeGrazia did and what he created is quite amazing. So everybody really appreciates it, whether they thought they'd like it or not.
Yeah, it's on the National Historic Register. So let's kind of go back in the past of Ted DeGrazia being born. He was born in Morenci, right? Which isn't that far from you.
Morenci is about 120 miles northeast of us. It's a copper mining town. And that's where he was born and raised.
And then what's interesting is his family, but they worked in the mine, right? His dad worked in the mine. Did DeGrazia ever work in the mine?
Actually, DeGrazia did go down in the mine a little bit. It wasn't something that he really wanted to do. He didn't want to make a career of it. But he did, and I think it convinced him at a pretty early age that that's not what he wanted to do in his life.
Right.
He knew from a pretty young age that he wanted to be an artist. He was very creative, and he was influenced by the colors of the copper mine and the colors that surround the desert. I think it really inspired him.
I was reading on the website today, and everyone, again, it's DeGrazia.org, that his family, which I completely forgot about this or didn't know. I mean, you'd think after all these years I'd know everything, but I don't, apparently. But that his family actually moved him and his siblings back to Italy at a specific point of time for not too long, but so he actually lived in Italy for a while in between the mine opening and closing.
They were there Yeah, they were there for about 10 years. The mine
Whoa.
closed in Morenci, and everybody was out of work. And so the family went back to Italy to work. And I think DeGrazia was about 5, something like that. And then they came back when the mine opened. It was 10 years later. He was 15 years old, and he had forgotten how to speak English. So he had to start first grade again with all the little kids and relearn how to speak English. So yeah, he struggled when he was young.
Wow. So he started, and he graduated when he was like 23. Graduated high school.
Yeah. Well, again, he got a late start. He had to relearn English, and he finally graduated high school from Morenci High School when he was 23 years old. But then, of course, he went on to the U of A and got 3 degrees. So the guy was no slouch. He was very smart. Just kind of a slow beginning.
He was a musician too.
He certainly picked up. Yes, he was. All the family, they were all musicians.
So he went to U of A, and he was a musician, an artist at the time too. But to earn money, he planted trees at the university to get him through school.
He was like the gardener guy. He was during the day. He would plant trees, and he helped build. There's a big huge wall that goes around the University of Arizona. It's a lava rock wall, and he helped build that. And then at night, he had a big band with his brother, and so they earned money at night, and that's how he put himself through school.
Wow.
This is so cool, everybody always looks like, age. What age are you? You're supposed to be at this level at this time, but that's only surface. What you're looking at, that's surface. And when you really get to know a person, you realize there's a lot more going on than what you think. And he definitely portrays that. Absolutely portrays all. As a creative individual, how many people can say they're an individual? They're not like something that just was right like the person next door and the person next door. An actual, thoughtful, self-thinking individual. There's a big difference.
He was the rebel. That's what he was. He was a rebel.
There you go. That's the word.
And he rebelled against the government, and he really rebelled against things that he felt were unfair. Taxes, on and on and on. He was a rebel. Definitely.
Do you think when he met Diego Rivera and Jose Orozco down in Mexico, which was like a kind of a lucky chance meeting, and then they worked with him, or he worked with them and learned from them, do you think that some of his rebellious spirit was also inspired by them? Or because when you look at what Diego Rivera stood for and Jose Orozco, they both stood for the people. They were kind of like like Cesar Chavez, right, for the farm workers. And I feel like Ted DeGrazia was that way for the people of Tucson, whether Mexican, all his connections, with the different Native American, indigenous people, that he was about the people and wanting to stand up for their stories. Because I don't think, if you think back in the day, maybe the government wasn't as nice to him, and let's that's today too.
Nice to him.
Yeah, and so I think he stood up for them through his art.
Well, I think that rebellious attitude, he always had that. And I think that's probably maybe one of the reasons he got along with Diego Rivera, was that it was all the same attitude. They all had this kind of anti-government. Don't get me wrong, DeGrazia was not a communist. DeGrazia was a capitalist through and through, where Diego Rivera was a communist. But you know, it was still
That's
they still
interesting.
had that you know, they still had that adversarial feeling toward the government.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't want to be curtailed, and you don't want somebody to tell you how to think, tell you how to paint, tell you how to do this, color within the lines, screw the lines. That's how artist thinks. We don't need the lines.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want the lines. We're going to
Yeah,
change
no,
the lines.
he didn't want anybody telling him what to do. He was going to
Exactly.
do what he wanted to do. You know, the
Yeah.
thing was that DeGrazia was a decent human being. He was a
Mm-hmm.
good man.
Yeah.
And so there was never any worry that he was going to do something wrong, but he was just going to do it the way he was a sovereign citizen.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
But
yeah,
that's an integrity
that's
to
it.
your art and who you are, right? In there's he was always studying and learning, and I think his kindness towards the local peoples shows he was a decent human being. He did care, but
Absolutely.
he didn't stand for stuff that is just stupid. Like there's also the art world is not the easiest of worlds, and at times can be a little on the snobby side. And I think that he also stood up against that, in that going, okay, well, if you don't get my stuff, I'm going to continue anyway. And that's how, because didn't the gallery as it stands now, which is the 10 acres, it has, his house, you've got the actual gallery, all adobe buildings, you've got the mission, you've got the little gallery, and also his gravesite, and then also his wife, also Marion DeGrazia is also, but she's got ashes scattered right in the tree there. But I mean, this is like a compound, really, that he was just like, you know what, I'm doing my own thing, I'm sailing my own ship in the desert, right? Beautiful setting. But I think he started at a smaller gallery, right? So he kind of, no matter what, he had this
did.
vision.
The vision was this: nobody would show his art, and if he was going to make it as an artist, he had to show his art. So it's like, if no one's going to let me hang my art, I'm going to have to make my own gallery, and that was his road to success. He built a smaller gallery in the middle of Tucson. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, do you have any idea why they wouldn't show his work? Because I mean,
yeah, I don't know. Well, people look down on DeGrazia. They in his early days, he painted very, very sad, dark kind of paintings, like Mexican Revolution and people, sad peasants, and very sad things that
commentary.
the things that Diego Rivera loved. He said, this is great stuff, but really people didn't necessarily want to buy the firing squad wall to hang up over their fireplace. So he wasn't selling a lot of work. And then when his not his style, but his subject matter started to change, and he started painting little children, because people were demanding this of him. People liked it, and so nobody wanted to show that work. So he just had to do his own gallery. Of course, it exploded. I mean, DeGrazia was wildly successful over the years, and just made a fortune. He made an absolute fortune in his life.
He understood then, like, it kind of got like, he has his commentary part, like what Nancy was saying, like, here's what I want you to understand. And he also wrote, films. I mean, he really had like this multifaceted creative mind and soul. Like, it didn't matter if he was going to do pottery or if he was going to do a painting. He wanted to do whatever the hell he wanted to do, and that was that. And
or a movie.
Movies.
Movies. There was
music.
There was no bounds to this guy. He just he tried everything.
Yeah.
And he was
That's
successful
cool.
at just about everything he tried.
Becoming one of the most reproduced artists, did that start with the UNICEF card, with him understanding this is what people want? So on the capitalistic
that was
side, to do it that way.
Yeah, that was the Los Ninos image that he painted a painting called Los Ninos. It was children dancing in a circle, and this is what UNICEF got a hold of this image and contacted him and said, we'd like permission to reproduce this. And they sold millions of greeting cards, millions worldwide, and that really, really put him on the map. But he was already on his way to that, but this really, really set him up.
You know, there was this era of when you try to put your art into a gallery, the powers that be in the gallery really were looking not at art or understanding art, but we're looking at marketability and who they could sell what to, knowing their clientele. So there is an era of, or a time when a gallery wasn't really a gallery, and it wasn't a introduce new artist and promote art as the message from the artist. It was, what can I sell to this client? Because I know they like these 3 colors, or they like this kind of landscape, or they want this kind of that. You know, so it was more of a marketing effort than it was art. And I think that he was one of the people that got caught up in that.
Well, they all got to make money. I mean, that's the whole idea.
Exactly.
Is to make a living from your art. And you know, DeGrazia had a rough time of it in the beginning, but as time went on, he started making his fortune. But that's when people started to really criticize him. You know, you're selling magnets, you're selling you know, plastic pendants, and you know, he was criticized for being commercial, and where every artist in the world does this now. You know, I mean, everybody does this. So, but he was the first one to get really, really highly criticized. And he was looked down upon, especially in Tucson.
Oh, that's so wild.
Which is too bad.
Yeah, when you go to the gallery, number one, you see the creativity of the building, the architecture, and the fact that he built it by hand with his friends by hand, you know. And I mean, I know they had tools and stuff, but you know what I mean? This is something that he created and designed, and it was very South. All the inspirations of the desert, right? And how people needed to live with nature too. And then when you go in and you see the art, you've got the permanent exhibits. You know, and then you've got rotating exhibits, which I think is great, so people can see, because you've got so much in the archives, right, to share with people and put together as here's these themed exhibits to learn more about his perspective and tell the stories that he was such a storyteller. But then when you go in the gift shop, it's like, it blows my mind. Like, for Christmas, like, you got ornaments, you've got Christmas cards, you've got like calendars for the next year, you've got all these things. But at the same time, like nowadays, artists can go on these websites and, you know, people can envision their art in their room, their living room or whatever, and purchase a shower curtain with their art on it, you know, with that kind of stuff, like you're saying. He understood that, but didn't he have to do it? It wasn't like just regular printing at that point too. Didn't he have people actually recreate his work for him, like take his designs?
Yeah, well, he had a guild of artists that, you know, they would make silver earrings, and they would make you know, they would reproduce his stuff for the gift shop, and that was you know, he was criticized for that. But I don't think he cared. I think that he was laughing all the way to the bank. And you know, rank and file people just loved him. The regular normal people of the world loved him. It was kind of the snooty art community that
Exactly.
maybe they were envious of his success. Maybe they thought his art was childish. Whatever it is, they were barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah.
That is that
he
era of art only belongs to the rich. That's the era I'm talking about. When you go to take a painting into a gallery,
right.
it was the art is not for the peasant or the average person. Art is for rich people only, and not that they even care. They might purchase, but their level of understanding and appreciation isn't different than anybody else. Sorry.
Sure.
Get in trouble for that one.
I will say this is the thing that DeGrazia was real successful at, was bringing art to the average person.
Yeah.
You could come into the gallery and spend $10 and get a nice piece of art that you love without having to spend thousands of dollars. And this is what he was roundly criticized for, was selling cheap, inexpensive art, I should say. Yeah, he broke the rules.
But he broke the rules.
That's what he did. He always broke the rules.
I love that because
rebel.
Well, why should it only be for the rich, right? To me, that's the beauty of art, is to connect and make people understand. So I think he was like this giant spokesperson for the people and the nature of the Sonoran Desert and of Mexico, and understanding the area. That's why I say when people go to Tucson, I'm like, you want to actually understand the people, the cultural backbone of Tucson, Arizona, which is in the Sonoran Desert, which is, this amazing biodiverse and culturally diverse area. I mean, you've got 5 seasons, and he portrays the wildlife, the vegetation, the people. Mm-hmm. He tells the story of like Father Font, who he loves, right? And he tells all of these cultural histories and traditions. I mean, I'm not personally a fan of rodeos and things. That's just not me. But that is part of the cultural history, and it's huge in Tucson. Mm-hmm. It's a huge piece of history for Tucson, and he did that.
It was a lot bigger in the past. Rodeos and bullfights were all still a very big deal back in the 60s and the 50s. It was a different world back then, and things that aren't quite accepted today were fully accepted back then.
I think he told the story, the history of the people, like Cabeza de Vaca. That's the one exhibit, permanent exhibit. Is my favorite because it tells the story of Cabeza coming over with his 200 people crawling through the desert of Texas, dying. In Cabeza de Vaca, and I think he was interested in those who wrote the stories and told the stories, and that was his
history.
Because Cabeza de Vaca, and I know we went to Galveston to go find Cabeza de Vaca's monument, right?
Oh gosh!
And I don't even want to talk about the amount of like the non-polite language that came out of my mouth going from Houston to Galveston in traffic. I don't, because they were doing construction. It was a mess. Okay. But by the time we get to Galveston, and I'd done all this research on him, and yet DeGrazia did this amazing portrayal of what these people went through. These explorers come off a ship, and then you're literally dying in the desert. This is not a terrain they're used to, but he documented everything. And he is actually considered the very first travel writer of Texas. When you think about travel writers now, like in Anthony Bourdain, the foodie writer and interpreter, like he is, like, to me, the Anthony Bourdain of the Southwest. That's who I think Ted DeGrazia is, in that, like, don't tell me what to believe, but telling the story of the people. But think about it in a way, right? And so when you read about Cabeza de Vaca, and then you go and they have this tiny plaque. That's it. And
one thing you can barely see.
And now I do know we have to go back to Houston. The Botanical Garden has like an actual sculpture, and more than a tiny plaque, but I was like, I can't, like Ted DeGrazia would be so pissed if he went there and saw them just give him on the ground. Everybody else has these big pillars, and Cabeza's on the ground with a plaque that he landed here. That's it. Like, this dude did so much, and 200 people in the desert crawling through. That desert is vicious. And so DeGrazia, what he's done for that, what he did about Father Font and even Juan Bautista going through, and everywhere we go in the Southwest and beyond the Southwest, we find DeGrazia everywhere. It's crazy, the stories he's told and how far it's gone. But I feel like I don't think I would really have gotten the visuals of Cabeza de Vaca and the people and what they went through if it wasn't for the gallery and seeing his art. I don't think I would have gotten it. You can't get it from a little measly plaque. Sorry, mad at it. I'm still really mad to get there, and they didn't give this guy justice. But DeGrazia did,
DeGrazia did. I mean, I don't know. It was such an interesting story. It was one of those dark stories that DeGrazia liked to tell, and it was such a dark story. And by the way, not to correct you, but I will anyway. It wasn't 200 men; it was 700 men.
Oh, good. Yeah, I thought you were going to correct me on my pronunciation, because I remember the first time. Remember the first time you came on a show years ago? I said saguaro, cactus.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You had to teach me it's saguaro. You will not be saying saguaro. That is not how you say it.
No, not when you're living in Arizona. You can't.
No. You sent me aside kindly and said, Lisa, I want you to know it's saguaro. It's not saguaro. But I think I even said it worse than that. But 700 men. Yeah, you're right. The 200 was the father. That 200 was Juan Bautista. That's the 200 people, and no one died on that expedition all the way up to San Francisco. It was like from Presidio to Presidio, Tucson, Presidio to, longer than that because of Mexico. But I mean, it's amazing that he even went to Mexico. He went with his first wife to Mexico on vacation, and then he got married to Marian there too.
Yeah, but no, they went down to Mexico in the early 30s to meet Diego Rivera. Him and his wife Alexandra. That's when they went down there, but they went specifically to meet him.
Oh, they did do it for specific.
They had to. They were in Mexico City, and Rivera was painting a mural or something, and DeGrazia bribed the security guard, gave him $5 and said, can you let me in? And he did. And he had a conversation with Diego Rivera, and Rivera said, I'll come and look at your art as soon as I get done. He was up there on a scaffold painting. And at the same time, right about then, Frida Kahlo walked in with dinner. So we got to meet Frida too.
Wow.
That's cool.
Wow.
So that was a very consequential meeting.
Big.
There's an openness. If you look at the history of art and you look at paintings, like the classical paintings up until things got a little shook up, there's an openness of music and paintings that had to happen. There were rumbles before, like this is too staid, all these art rules for classical paintings. You had to do it this way, and you can only do it that way, and you can only mix so many colors together and all that. And then you come across somebody like Ted DeGrazia goes, oh, screw that. I'm doing it my way. And here it is. And the difference is the openness of his artwork. When I say openness, I mean the welcoming of, oh, I can identify with that, as opposed to somebody has to explain this painting over here to me, or they think they need to explain it, right? There's a difference.
Right.
There's a difference. But
that's true.
Yeah. And so you can look at Ted DeGrazia's work. You don't really need someone to interpret. it's cool if there's a caption on the painting who says when and why it was done and the story behind it. That's always great. I love that, because now the painting even means more. But it's not like it used to be with the classical paintings where you're like, I don't know what the heck I'm looking for.
Well, he did
I mean,
abstract too. He did abstract,
yeah,
and that's on display.
but I mean, good art, in my opinion, I will put little court marks there, in my opinion, doesn't need to be explained. You should get a feeling from it. And you're not going to get it from every piece of art because no one gets everything, right? But when you look at DeGrazia's art, you can feel it, and I feel it's always warm. And you're talking about dark periods and all that, but when I look at his work, I find it very open and warm and welcoming.
I think he's always telling the story of bravery.
Yeah,
But
art's a funny. It's an odd subject. It's a weird thing because you're really talking about people putting their emotions on canvas or paper or in clay or whatever they're doing. And that's a tricky thing to do.
But his art is simple, but he has a movement. It's not like a gazillion lines in his art. He keeps things so simple, but there's the exhibit you have now, the trail rides and the people on horses, right? And if it's like a cowboy or something, you can see like a cloth around, like just this basic thing, you can already envision and feel that it's like a cold morning, or you know what I mean? I find that amazing about his work, how it was done simply it wasn't over processed, and yet you have the movement, but you could get the feeling immediately. And that's why I think what's so great about it, he's, as a storyteller, I think he also allows you to envision and to feel what these people went through. We like him. I wish we met him. Did you meet him? You did meet him, Lance. You did when you were a kid. Didn't you get to meet him?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. No, I grew up with his grandkids, so I met him on occasion throughout the years, and I didn't really know him. He was a complex guy that was always on the move, but he knew who I was. I was a 5-year-old friend of his grandkids. That's who I was.
He's like, that's a kid over there. Tell everybody a little bit about Arizona Highways, because isn't that part of his success was working with the editor?
Yeah. Well, in the early 40s, the editor, Raymond Carlson of Arizona Highways, discovered DeGrazia, and they collaborated, and they started putting him in the magazine, and that really started, along with the UNICEF thing, really, because Arizona Highways was sold all over the country. Subscribed to that magazine all over the place, and that really brought a lot of people into the gallery. So it was big for him.
And then from there, he gets really big. His work is all over the world. Whether it's a Christmas card, a magnet, a painting, goes everywhere. And then he decided to burn some of his work in the Superstition Mountains. I have to bring that up because I know this is giving everyone an overview of who he is, so that when you go to the gallery, you get it. But yes, he went into the mountains and burned his work.
In '76, he was mad. It was the tax protest. He couldn't leave his paintings. He painted so much, and the government considered it his inventory, and he couldn't leave his paintings to his family, his heirs, without having to sell off a huge amount of it to pay the tax. So he got mad, and he went up to the Superstition Mountains with 100 paintings. It was about $1.5 million worth, and he burned them. Wow! And so he he had his principles and he stuck to them.
I like that about him. It's integrity, to his principles, like you're
Absolutely.
saying, to his beliefs, I want people to understand about the gallery. So when you go there is a mission on the property, and people get married there. They go there for some spiritual connection. Why did he decide a mission had to be part of the gallery?
Back in it's a tradition in Mexico when you become a landowner that you build a church on your property. And when DeGrazia bought that 10 acres out there in the Catalina foothills, that was the first thing he did. He became a landowner and he built a church to give thanks. That's what they did.
And then the nuns, there's the one part of the gallery that I know is admin offices, but the nuns were there, right? That was like the nuns' quarters?
They used to, the Benedictine sisters used to visit from California, and, he had all these sisters that were friends, and they would come to visit, and he would just let them stay in the nun's house, and, they would sign the walls, and, so yeah, no, he had a lot of friends in the church.
And I know that you have the annual exhibit, The Way of the Cross Up, and that's something that you always laugh at. If you ever, you're not allowed to not, to skip that. You have to do that every year, no matter what. And this is, on display through Lent, but it's 15 original paintings showcasing the suffering and crucifixion of Christ. And this is something you do every year. They're on display until the 30th of August this year. Just like the rotating exhibits, there's also On the Trail with Ted DeGrazia, abstract paintings of Ted DeGrazia, and DeGrazia Underground, Miners and Prospectors of the Old West. Those are the 4 exhibits on display until the 30th in 2023. All of that is on DeGrazia.org, and they're on Instagram and Facebook and everything. But The Way of the Cross, do you think that kind of came from the sisters giving him a little nudge? You must do this. Do you think one of them said, "I'll whack your knuckles if you don't do it"?
At the University of Arizona, there's a Catholic center called the Newman Center, and the priest that was there at the time asked DeGrazia to do this, and DeGrazia in the beginning said no. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of doing this. And the priest said, well, I think you are. And, please give it a try. And so DeGrazia did. And of course, he knocked it out of the park. He did this incredible Way of the Cross. And that's how it came to be. And they actually put it up at the Newman Center until they found out the value of the collection. And the priest said, no, you got to come and take this back. We'll put prints up. We can't afford the insurance. So
wow.
Anyway, that's how the Way of the Cross came about.
Wow. And he has, instead of the 14 stations of the cross, he had 15, right? So
yeah, he added one.
Yeah, and then he has an audio tape where he talks too. And when you go to the gallery, I encourage you to watch the video. His video biography explaining his art and who he is. It's just a really good introduction. But the gallery is so cool. The adobe buildings, the just being out there in the desert too, and the cactus corral at the center of the courtyard with the fountain, the yaqui dancer. There's always something new to learn. And again, Nancy, didn't we learn more today how long have we been talking about Ted DeGrazia? For years. And every time you come on a show, Lance, we learn something.
He's a complex person.
Yeah. Every single time you come on, we learn something new. And every time we go to the gallery, there's something new. So I encourage everyone to go to DeGrazia.org and go to the gallery. It is beautiful. And if you're road tripping this summer, put it on your list. And Tucson should be on your list, period. Isn't Tucson one of the best cities, Lance? It really is. It is. It's.
Well, I was born here, so I think it is.
It is.
Yeah, it's a nice place. It's a very nice place.
I love it. I love it out there. And don't be afraid of the summer. Summer can be, yes, really hot, but then you can have siesta time. But if the monsoons come, it is magic. Monsoon rain. Hey, I love it.
After spending back east in winter, I'm ready for Tucson.
Yeah, to me, I want 120 degrees and monsoons
I
and all
know
of
it
it.
sounds good to me.
I know. Are the cactus
Well, it's
starting to
on the
bloom?
way, so
Yeah.
Mm.
Is it? Ooh.
not a little bit.
Yeah.
It's turning spring. You know, the flowers are starting to pop.
Nice. Nice. I think it's going to be a magical year in Tucson this year. And I want everyone to go.
Well,
Everyone,
you
we're
know
going
what?
to go ahead.
I'm going to say we got a lot of rain, so there's going to be lots of flowers this year.
That's what I think.
Cool.
I think this is going to be one of those crazy cool. I mean, even Joshua trees in bloom. And this is the thing, for people road tripping and national park people, you've got Saguaro National Park, Saguaro, just for Lance. Saguaro National Park, Sabino Canyon, Fort Bowie, down the road in Wilcox area, Chiricahua Mountains, Gila Cliff Dwellings, and then you can go up through. I mean, there's just so many parks and public lands to experience, and it's easy to go up to like Death Valley from there, Joshua Tree, Anza Borrego. I mean, it just is so centrally located. If you're traveling if you fly in, Tucson has one of the best airports on the planet. It is one of the easiest airports to fly out of and arrive in. It's quiet. There's very few airports like Tucson, and I encourage people to use that airport because it is so much easier than going to one of those crazy big ones where you get lost. Lance, have you flown out of there recently or picked anyone up there? It's really
not
quiet.
lately.
It's quiet.
Yeah,
it's like
no,
a quiet.
it has been.
Yeah, it's a quiet airport, so which we love. It's really easy, and once you get out, you're like, "Wow, I am out in the desert." It's awesome. So, but again, everyone, we're going to be here every fourth Sunday, picking Lance's brain for news stories about Ted DeGrazia, which he always has something awesome to tell us about. He is the Tucson dude, and that's why he will stand up and say, "Yes, it is one of the best cities on the planet." So, thank you so much, everyone. Keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. Thank you so much, Tucson dude.
Thank you.